could kill you there. You know, you never really see them, but we went in armed nonetheless. And so as we started on the tour, literally about 100 feet up the trail, we started getting hits with our ghost hunting gear. And we all stopped and were on this, and we started communicating for about 10 minutes with these spirits. We were able to find out through yes-no questions that they were from Japan. It was a husband and wife, and they were heading up to Barkerville. And so here we are. We said goodbye to them, and thank you for your time, and our machines kept going off. And we're like, what the heck is this all about? Like, we told them we're going to go this way, and they're going that way. And yet our machines were going off. And then it clued into me, Grant. This is a wagon trail. So where we were standing was actually, in their mind, as weird as this may sound, it sounded like where we were standing, we were blocking them from continuing. Because we were standing on the trail, and their horses and carriage would have been behind them, and they couldn't move their horses and carriage because we're in front of them. So we all moved to the sides of this path, and the next thing you know, you see our meters going off and off and off into the distance. Mine would shut off, and the next person besides me would shut off. Next person beside them would shut off, and it was like they hopped on their carriage and went away. So we continued down the trail, and I got pinched. I've never been pinched by a spirit before. One of the guys who was at the tour, spaced out radio listener named Ron, had seen an orb in the bushes. So him and I walked in there, and right on my chest, right here, I got pinched. So like right on my collarbone area. And I'd never had that happen before. And last night I had a little bit of a red mark there. And that just kind of continued. We saw a few more orbs, and then we went north. So we started south, came back up the south trail, and then went north, where we encountered the spirit of a little girl who ran away with her sister, and her sister was way deep in the bushes. So as we're trying to communicate with her, she's like, no, I'm not bringing my sister out. And we were able to, you know, as silly as this sounds for people who don't believe, we had enough people there, spiritual people there, where we could send them to the light to go with their parents. And it was very rough on me and Ron, because we were the ones kind of bringing the light down to the little girl, so that way they could step in, and then another empath actually watched them leave, which is nice for them, because I don't care if they're ghosts or they're real children. You don't want children running around a bare forest.
Yeah, and you do tours around here, so this is what was kind of new to me. Was it wasn't just the UFO thing. There was, most of the people there were paranormal people. They were into dowsing. They were into ghosts. They were into this kind of stuff. So tell a little bit about the area here, and maybe talk a little bit about Sasquatches as well, because you have that in this area.
Absolutely. The Caribou region of British Columbia, which is almost at the central point, right in the middle of the province, it is an area that has had a numerous amount of sightings of everything. The Gold Rush Trail makes this area very, very haunted. Then we have a lot of UFO sightings because, as we've known through history, that we've been able to deduce, is UFOs always seem to be attracted to volcanic areas, which this is. We're right on Volcano Alley. If you start at Mount Shasta and work in California, work your way up. There's a town about 20 minutes from where we are called Lone Butte, where they actually have this almost like a devil's tower hanging out there, and that used to be the volcano. It's been dormant for over 1 million years. And so this entire area is very, very volcanic. Also, we have a lot of gold. And how many times have we heard about UFO reports being in high concentration of gold areas? So we got everything. We got gold, we have water, and we have volcanic activity. Well, not activity, but volcanic area. And from what I've learned in my few years of research, nothing compared to you, my friend, is those three areas really seem to attract UFOs. So we have a high concentration of UFOs. And for people who know the Miriam Delicato experience, she was actually abducted in this town. And that goes back 30 years to 1988. We also have Sasquatch sightings here. A lot of the First Nations in this area, along with a lot of people who are hunting and logging in this area, have had experiences. Myself, I have a Sasquatch gifting site in the forest close to where we found 2 different size prints. One print being about 18 inches by 9 inches, and the other print being about 14.5 inches by 5.5 inches.
So what do you do at a gifting site? Explain what a gifting site is.
Okay, so a gifting site for a lot of people is what they will do is they will leave toys or leave shiny objects like a mirror or bouncy balls to try anything to get prints or any type of reaction. Now, in the U.S., I know a lot of people who have these gifting sites actually will put food out for Sasquatch, but when you have such a wilderness area like we do with so many different animals out there, like for instance, the animals that are out near my gifting site that we have found prints for, we've found wolves, we've found coyotes, foxes, rabbits, porcupines, bears, cougars, deer, moose, and there is a ton of animals there that are looking and foraging for food. So for us to put food out there, like a lot of people in the U.S. where maybe they don't have bears or they don't have bigger animals that can open up plastic lock and lock containers, we don't do that here. We can't. So what we've done is we've set up Hot Wheels cars, very bright colored Hot Wheels cars, sparkly colored slinkies that you can get at the dollar store, put Christmas ornaments up. We've got a jingle bell there, and on the ground in between where we put the site, we've actually got rocks in there, colored rocks in the ground, where last year we actually had some movement in those little colored rocks. That was a little bit interesting. And on our gifting site, the reason why we chose where we did is that about 12 feet high on this tree, there is 2 large pieces of bark that have been ripped off this tree. We have looked for claw prints to see, okay, is it a big bear that has done this, or is it a porcupine that has done this? No, it's not, because it wouldn't be a porcupine, because all the branches are intact. And when a porcupine climbs trees, it breaks the smaller branches because it's a heavy little fat animal. Yeah. And bears are the same way. Where these scratches are, there's no movement in the branches whatsoever. So my hunting guide friend, who is now my Bigfoot hunter after he saw the prints, he's been in the forest for 30 years, and the spot that we chose it, he cannot explain why those scratches are up there. He can take us to areas right now where we'll be driving down and he'll stop the vehicle. There's moose scratching on the trees. Or stop the vehicle, those are porcupine marks, or this is where a cougar marked its territory, or this is where a bear is marking its territory with its claws. He knows it all, and when you spend 30 years dealing with big wild animals, you learn very, very quickly. And these big chunks, which are about 6, 7 inches, 8 inches by about 4 or 5 inches wide, at 12 feet high, something had to get them. So are we saying it's Bigfoot? No, we can't prove that. But what we are saying is it's something anomalous that would have to be able to reach up there to pull that bark down. So that's why we set it up, to see if we could get any communication. Unfortunately, in 2018 here, because we had the forest fires last year very, very close in that area, it seems to have scared off a lot of the wildlife. We went back there a few weeks ago just to check it out, and the first thing we do is we go along the paths looking for prints. Doesn't matter what it is, we want to see prints. Bears, rabbits, deer, moose, wild horses, we want to see them. We do not see them. So it's a little concerning. I don't think they're there right now.
Yeah, and because I've had 2 sightings, and I want you to clarify, because we had this discussion yesterday, what's the difference between Sasquatch and Bigfoot?
As far as I know, nothing.
If one term is used,
one term is used. Americans usually call it Bigfoot. Okay, because that was a term kind of coined around the Patterson-Gimlin famous film. Whereas up here, Sasquatch came from the Chehalis Indian Band near Mission, British Columbia, Harrison Hot Springs, where a lot of people have been to that tourist attraction, and a lot of sightings they've had there. But the First Nations band around there basically called it Sasquatch, which means wild man. So that's how it got its name. So up here, we really it's weird for me because 75% of my audience is American. They use the term Bigfoot. So that's why a lot of times I'll say Bigfoot instead of Sasquatch, because I'm talking to more American people than I am Canadian people. And I have a lot of Canadian friends who actually rib me about that. You're in Canada, use Sasquatch. So I have to remember that very often.
Now let's bring Michael in here. This afternoon we had come back to the lodge, and we were standing around, and Dave was with a guy who had done a carving, and we were going to tape his story, and he said, "No, I'd rather you not." I think you spent a lot of time with him. I only heard the first part of the story. Can you tell the story of this guy and the carving that we were with today? Because you spent quite a bit of time with him, as you did in the restaurant here. It's kind of strange to go to some of the restaurant, and the waitress comes up and he says, "Have you ever seen a UFO? Here's my card." And everywhere we go, he says, "Have you ever seen a UFO? Here's my card." But you had a long talk with this guy. So tell us the story of this guy with the carving.
Yeah. Oh, this was a fascinating story. And the gentleman is quite an artist. I mean, the guy is really good. His name is Dwayne. I won't give his first name. And Dwayne is actually, he's a logger by trade, he says, and has been his whole life. And he's probably in his, 50, 60, early 60s at this point. And he told me this amazing story. This happened, by the way, in 1982, he says. And he's in this area up here, 108-mile house area where he lives. He says he and his wife were standing at their back door, sliding glass door, looking out over their patio, a raised patio, and they're just kind of sitting there staring out the window and kind of enjoying the view one night when all of a sudden this giant cone of light green light comes down, and he believes that it's about 100-foot perimeter in diameter light that definitely covers his whole house. He thinks that this, whatever it was directly over the head of his house. His nearest neighbors are quite far away, so there wasn't any other houses illuminated, but he says that it was just eerie, this light that he's never seen before coming straight down from the sky, no sound at all. He was thinking it could be a helicopter, could be something, but it was not a helicopter, no sound at all. And then he had some kind of an interesting noise, kind of like a buzz, he said he heard. Then the strange thing is that, he remembers the thing for about, I think he said about a minute or 2 minutes just standing there watching this. He didn't want to move, and maybe he couldn't move. I don't know about that. But all of a sudden, he says the light went out. And he doesn't really, I forgot to ask him. I usually like to do this. So what did you do next, after one of these sightings? A lot of people say, I just went back to sleep, or, I didn't think much of it, or something like that. And he didn't really have any explanation of what happened right after the event. But this was something that intrigued him so much that he started making these beautiful wood carvings of alien faces that look very similar to Whitley Strieber's front of his book Communion, that kind of face. And matter of fact, he does this in giant log pieces of wood, and he has an amazing affinity to do this. He'll take 6 months or so to create one of these sculptures, and they're just awesome. Very good. Matter of fact, he was selling the one that he brought to the Caribou Paracon for relatively inexpensive money. So I couldn't believe it. And of course, he's working on others as we speak. But fascinating fellow. Thanks, Dwayne, for taking your time with us.
And then Dave asked him to do a Sasquatch, and he said, "No, too much hair. Can't do that." And so you're handing out the cards. So let's go through this. What group are you working with? What do you do? And what's your best success when you handed someone a card and they turned around and told you a story?
Yeah, thanks to Grant. What we do is I'm the founder and director of the UFO I-Team, and people can find that on Facebook real easy, and or our website, ufoiteam.com. But we are a small group, maybe 12, 15 of us generally, of highly educated, PhD level, master's level individuals who go out and investigate UFOs and paranormal activity. And you're right. I'm kind of known for the guy who passes out my card everywhere we go. And I am surprised, ever since the New York Times